This is Naze Tower, an 18th century tower located in Walton-on-the-Naze in Essex, England. Today, across its many floors, it houses an art gallery, museum and even tea rooms, although its function throughout history has varied wildly, from a simple navigation mark to World War II radar tower. Originally constructed in 1720 by the company Trinity House, it stands at 86 feet tall and is built around 4 thick pillars. These reach the 7th floor and provide its main structural integrity. A spiral staircase, thought to be Victorian in origin, links the ground floor to the 6th floor, and another 2 staircases added in 2004 link to the roof. All in all, it's 111 steps to the top, although the view is definitely worth it. It was originally used as a navigation mark to aid sailors coming and going from the port of Harwich, and is still used as a landmark by sailors today. It's thought that Naze Tower was built to replace another tower that once stood on the same site dating back to the 1500s. The previous tower was recorded as having fires lit on top as a beacon, and Naze Tower likely used a similar beacon and later fixed oil lamps. This site is an obvious choice as it's the highest point in the district opposite a break in the sandbanks out to sea, which is now known as the Medusa Channel, named after one of Admiral Nelson's ships. It was during the 18th century that the tower saw its first use as a tea room. During this period, the British upper class were really beginning to fall in love with tea, which was an expensive commodity, and wealthy socialites would meet together to take tea. One such elite was Martha Ray, a successful artist and singer from London and mistress to Lord Sandwich, who was friends with the custodian of Naze Tower, MP Richard Rigby, who allowed Ray to use it as a tea room and to entertain her guests. She used the tower for this purpose between 1760 and 70, although unfortunately Martha Ray would not use the tower again as she was tragically murdered in London in 1779 by a man named James Hackman. He shot her at the Royal Opera House in Covent Garden and attempted to shoot himself after committing the murder but was unsuccessful. He was later hanged in front of a large crowd. Lord Sandwich was reported to be devastated by her death, although thankfully the use of Naze Tower as a tea room is one of the few historical functions of the tower that continue today. The tower was first used militarily in the early 19th century during the Napoleonic Wars fought between 1803 and 1815, when it was used as a lookout post and beacon to watch for French ships. Later on, in the early 20th century, the Royal Navy used it to practice signalling with flags and semaphore. This helped ships practice manoeuvres out at sea. During the First World War, it was again used as a lookout post and had added sentry boxes attached to the outside. During the Second World War, Walton-on-the-Naze was heavily militarised. The area surrounding the tower was littered with pillboxes, Nissen huts and anti-aircraft guns. Many of the pillboxes remain, and due to the rapid erosion of the cliffs, some of them are now located on the beach and are regularly submerged by the high tide. In the 1930s, British scientists had developed the first radar systems, and by 1939 a string of early warning radar, known as chain home stations, had been erected along the southern and eastern coasts of Britain. These systems utilised massive steel transmitter masts and could detect enemy aircraft over 80 miles away. In 1940, the invention of the Cavity Magnetron allowed for the production of more sensitive radar that could detect lower flying aircraft and ships, and in May of 1942, Naze Tower was chosen to be the site for a new chain-home low radar dish. The tower's castellations were removed to make room for the dish, and the radar was used to scan for incoming German aircraft and ships. To the north of the tower, a decoy bombing site was located, whereby upon the detection of enemy aircraft, fires would be lit to draw the bombers away. The radar's operators were based within the tower itself and in buildings nearby. In 1944, Germany began launching their new V-1 rockets at Britain. These were unguided and designed to terrorise the British public and demoralise them. Citizens nicknamed these rockets doodlebugs, due to the drone of their engine sounding similar to the Beetles, also known as Maybugs, whilst in flight. These rockets caused large numbers of civilian casualties and the destruction of homes. Naturally, a large amount of resources were devoted to shooting them down. Anti-aircraft guns were responsible for shooting down over 1,800 V-1s, and this image shows 3.7-inch AA guns based in Walton on the Naze. Many of these were erected close to Naze Tower and were used to shoot down the Germans' new rockets. The other structures seen behind these guns are rocket batteries, which would launch volleys of unguided rockets at enemy aircraft formations. Eventually, the V-1 rockets were upgraded to V-2s, and these highly advanced rockets could travel at the speed of sound and at very high altitudes, making them practically impossible to shoot down at the time. The Allies therefore resorted to extensive bombing campaigns of their launch sites, and by 1945 the Germans had given up on these expensive wonder weapons. Staying with the theme of rockets, top secret research into some of Britain's first ever guided missiles was conducted in the area around Naze Tower. A new surface-to-air missile known as Breakmine began testing here in September of 1944. The missile utilised a beam guidance system which used radar beams to guide it towards its target. The Breakmine missiles were of a simple design and possessed rotatable fins allowing them to twist and steer towards their target. A modified 3.7-inch AA gun traversal mechanism was used to launch the missiles out to sea. Once they fell into the ocean, they were retrieved for further analysis. Testing ended with the war in 1945, and the Breakmines would never see action again. However, their twist and steer method of flight would reappear on the Bristol Bloodhound surface-to-air missile. These were developed in the 1950s and were used on a large scale by the RAF right up into the 90s. Naze Tower continued to be used by the military right into the Cold War. Between March 1957 and June 1958, it housed a radio relay station manned by Detachment 4 of the 603rd Communications Squadron of the American Air Force. The tower has been regularly used for communication purposes, with the Haven Port Authority, local police and coast guards all having positioned aerials on top of it during the 70s and 80s. Trinity House sold Naze Tower to a man named Roy Bradley in 1986. He bought it as a gift for his wife, who was reportedly very fond of it. He also wanted to use it as a rehearsal space for his band, the Nitwits. Supposedly, he even planned to hoist a grand piano up to the top floor, but this proved impossible. The tower was sold again to the current owners in 1996, and after much restoration, including the re-addition of its castellations, it was opened to the public in 2004. Naze Tower is certainly very quaint, and I definitely recommend the view from the top. However, you intend to visit, you better make it quick. The rapidly eroding coastline means this tower only has a predicted lifespan of 15 to 20 years left. When it was originally built, the tower stood a quarter of a mile inland, but now stands just 60 metres from the cliff edge, and unless adequate sea defences are built, it will eventually be claimed by the ocean. One advantage of the Rhodian cliffs, however, is that Naze Beach is famous for fossils. Pyrotised wood is very common. These are some pieces I collected. This wood is thought to be from the Eocene epoch and possibly up to 54 million years old. During this period, the UK was much closer to the equator and would have had a climate more similar to modern day Spain's. Shells are also very common, stained orange by the high iron content of the soil. If you're very lucky, shark's teeth can also be found, including even the giant teeth of the extinct megalodon. And yeah, well, that's about all I had to say. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.